Saskatoon and the city of volunteers that we are has a very special volunteer, and that is the consul for France. And I have Veronique Loewen with us today. Veronique, thanks for actually coming into the studio and meeting with us.
Well, thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Talk a little bit about yourself and how Veronique Loewen came to Saskatoon from where she's from.
Right. So Veronique Loewen, obviously Loewen is my married name. Not very French. But I was born and raised in France, just Paris's suburb, just outside of Paris, or the greater Paris, as we would say. And was raised there into my grade school years. And then my parents were actually from the island of Martinique, which is a French island in the Caribbean. So when I was about, I would say, grade 7, they decided to go back to their home island, and obviously took their children with. There I went. Did all my teenage years in the Caribbean, in Martinique, and when I graduated, went back to France to study. And so that's where the story picks up. For my studies, I needed to do a practicum in an English-speaking country. Through some connections, I landed in Saskatoon as a summer student. Never left. Loved the prairies. Actually fell in love with, I would say, the fields. Like canola fields is what kept me here. I just loved it. Driving for miles and miles and miles, and yeah, they were in bloom and it was just gorgeous. So stayed here, and I've been here for just about 30 years, just about.
Wow. And the island of Martinique, is French the primary language there as well, or is there some English? Or
you know what? So Martinique, French island, used to be a French colony. Now it's a French province, just like Saskatchewan would be a province of Canada. So same law, same currency, same everything, right? So it's just not located in France. It's just right in a different part of the world. But so that's for laws and currency. As for language, French would be the first language, or official, we would say, language, but we have our own language, which is Creole. So most of the islands, I would say, in the Caribbean and outside of the Caribbean, even in the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, have their own language, which equates to Creole, just like Cajun. Cajun is very close to Creole, so we actually understand each other when we speak those languages. Because they're a mixture of whoever was colonizing those regions at the time, so of their language. So they're a mixture of French, English, Spanish. I mean, at any given time in history, Martinique was Spaniard, British, and then French, and then back to British, and then back to Spaniard, and back to French. And it just so happened that French was the last ones to hold that little piece of, island in the ocean. So French is the main language, but Creole is very much spoken and now taught in school. For the longest time, it wasn't. But I would say it's a bit like indigenous languages here. For a long time, it was just an oral language. People didn't pass it on in other ways than orally. Now it's actually transcribed. There's books, dictionaries, grammar to it, etc. So it's the same for Creole. It is now a language that you can study in school, even in university. And there's all kinds of rules to it. It's really a mixture of English and French, mostly, I would say. Basically, a lot of words that derive from French or Spanish, because those are Latin words. And then some of them are, but the syntax, so the way the sentences are constructed, that's English.
Wow.
So it's very different. For example, for my husband, a lot easier to understand Creole than French, because the syntax is similar to English.
So when you arrive in Saskatoon, and you've been here for a significant amount of time to understand cultures and politics and economic activities, the country of France looks for representation here for its citizens. And how did that come to be with you getting a nod and asked to represent in your role.
Yeah. So, indeed, so many countries have representations from citizens that live in other countries. So France, in Canada, aside from its own, I would say, administration that has representation here, so the consulates, for example, so consulate and embassy. Aside from that, because in Canada the territory is so vast, they couldn't have a consulate in every province. So instead, what they're doing is they have a few consulates. There's one in Vancouver, one, a couple in Quebec, one in Ontario. And so aside from that, they needed people to be able to handle things when they arise in a province where there isn't a consulate. So in Saskatchewan, no consulate. We actually are affiliated with the consulate in Vancouver. And so they wanted somebody that would be here to represent France, to represent the government, to help citizens of France that live here, whether they're dual citizen, like me. I have a dual citizenship because now I'm also a Canadian. So to help those French citizens, to help Canadians who are maybe trying to emigrate to France, trying to have or even visit and need to understand processes or what have you. People have all kinds of questions. So it's good for French citizens, but it's also good for Canadian citizens, whether they want to immigrate, study, lots of study exchanges, or business relationships. So I'm there to help them navigate the French administration, the French system, direct them to where they need to go, where to find the information they require, that sort of thing. For our own citizen, for French citizen, beyond helping them navigate the system, it's also sometimes helping them when there's an election. For example, we recently had the presidential election in France. French citizens are allowed to vote wherever they are in the world. They can either go vote in person at a consulate, for example, or they can come and see me, and we create proxies, and then whoever will vote on their behalf. And so I would help them get that proxy, for example. So that's elections. Now, if a French citizen, say, was to pass away here, and their family wanted the body or the ashes returned to their homeland, I would help them with that process. There's a whole rigmarole with that. We tend to think, we take the ashes, you put them in a box, you get on the plane. Well, not so fast.
Right.
You can't actually do that. It's illegal. You have to have a whole process and authorization to do that. And so then I would help with that process and make sure that they have the proper paperwork and et cetera, et cetera. So there's those kinds of things that happen. People aren't always aware, and then they find out, when they're in that situation, right? There's also French citizens that have worked in both countries, so they're entitled to the equivalent, say, of CPP.
Oh,
so
yes.
if they've worked in both countries, but they live here now, they're still entitled to their French CPP of sort, right? But to get that, they have to prove that they're still alive, for example. They come and see me. I'm the one that says, yeah, you're still standing. You can get it, right? So there's those kind of things that happen. It's a lot of, I would say, paperwork. And then people that want to renew their passports, their French passport, their French ID card. In France, we do carry an ID card, so people don't carry their passport everywhere, but they have an ID card that says, yeah, I'm a French citizen. So if you want to renew those pieces, or if you were born in France, you need your birth certificates, etc., those kind of things I can help with.
The bigger picture from that office in Vancouver, you're an honorary consul in a volunteer capacity here.
Correct.
So this is very noble of you to give up your time for your fellow country people that you represent. I would want that if I was in France as a Canadian.
That's right.
The Vancouver office, though, the area that manages under that purview is quite large.
It is. It is. So currently the Vancouver office look after Saskatchewan, Alberta.
Yeah, Saskatchewan is just you.
So just Saskatchewan is just me.
Right.
Alberta.
Right.
There are actually 2 honorary consuls in Alberta, one in Calgary, one in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
They also look after Northwest Territories. There's 1 honorary consul. The Yukon, 1 honorary consul. And British Columbia. British Columbia, there are 2 honorary consuls. And the way that they decide on how many, etc., is based on population of French citizens. So the more French citizens there's in an area, the more honorary consuls they will have.
The need for you, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I find it fascinating just in terms of all of the things that I've known you for over the years, and this capacity has just come onto your role now. How did that happen in terms of why Veronique?
Why Veronique? I would say it's a little bit of chance. It's a little bit of, I would say, when in a way, it's a little bit of, having the right connection, the right understanding, etc. So having lived here for 30 years, having been in industry for 25 of these 30 years, I have a pretty good understanding of what happened in this economy.
Mm-hmm.
I have a pretty good understanding of, government relations. That was my old job. So my full-time job, I used to be in charge of communications, government relations, community relations. And so I have met a lot of people. I have known a lot of people. So I know how to navigate things here, whether it's on the business side, on the government regulatory side, and then community-wise. That's one of my passion, is to be involved in the community and volunteer with all kinds of organizations. And so I also have that broad network. So that was one factor that I think influenced their decision in saying, we need somebody with a broad network, who has a good understanding, is well established, is not going to pick up and leave tomorrow, because there's also that. They need to know that it's somebody who's living here and established. So that helped, because part of my role is also to help companies that want to do business in France. So companies that are here want to do business in France, we're open to that. Students that are here that want to go study in France, we're open to that. Just the same as we're open to bringing students here from France. So all of that.
It all came together in a nice package, and that's why you're there.
You bet.
I think they've made a great choice. I want to thank you for your friendship and all of the work that you've done and continue to do. We'll put your information up on the screen for people to get a hold of you if they need your help. Thanks so much for taking time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.